My microphone is working. Are the mics on?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Carolina from Brazil. I run a nonprofit in Brazil called SocialGood Brazil, and we were pretty much inspired by the SocialGood Summit here in New York in 2011. And then out of that, we decided to start a nonprofit in Brazil with following the same principles of how can we use the power of technology and innovation to drive social change. And then since then, we have organized summits in Brazil, as Caleb have already introduced to you before, and a lab program for social innovators. And this panel is really the perfect sequence of the last panel you had, because we are going to be focusing on talking how could you now diffuse innovation. So what is the next step? So once you identify innovations, how could you scale them, consolidate them, go to a next level? And here we have 4 amazing connectors and advisors that they have really on the ground and practicing experience to share with you. And just to start, because one of the reasons I was asked to be the moderator is because during the SocialGood Brazil program has grown so fast, and I think is a very good link with the previous panel. One of the key elements we use to scale since the beginning of our program is to collaborate a lot and never do a project alone. So I really enjoyed the last panel when the guys were talking about the power of collaboration, because we use that for scale. So since the beginning, we are working with like 50 partners all over Brazil, and we are always looking to co-creating even our approaches with them and engage them in a very deep level in order to be able to achieve the whole Brazil, which is a big country, as you all know. So I'm not going to talk more about myself and about SocialGood Brazil. I really want to give the space for the connectors and advisors to share their experience with you. And what I like is here we have people coming with experiences of scaling innovation in all different sectors. So you're going to be able to see how social innovation is being done in different sectors and how it's applicable for everyone. And this is, I think, the great thing about SocialGood, right? That is very cross-sector. I'm going to start asking Ismael. He's one of the Plus SocialGood advisors from France, and he is the founder of SocialGood Week and a crowdfunding platform for nonprofits. So he's going to bring a little bit of the experience with the nonprofit sector. And what I found very interesting, Ismael, that you started a project in a small version, with 20 nonprofits, and then it grew for 2,000, and now you're willing to go even more. So could you explain what elements did you use in this crowdfunding platform that it really made it possible to scale? And please explain a little bit more about what you do.
Hi everybody. As Carolina told you, I'm French, and I founded a crowdfunding platform whose name is Hello Asso. Asso means NGO in France. And what we saw is, in fact, we began building the platform and with 20 NGO trying to test a lot of things, and it was not working at all. So we began iterating during like about 2 years, and that's a truly important point to my mind about innovation and also social innovation. But social innovation is first innovation, and the process of iteration was changing the features, keeping it simple, so that the 20 NGOs on our platform could use it, and could use it very simply, because in French, the presidents of many NGOs are senior and they don't know nothing about digital. So it has to be very, very simple. And so this process of iterating was very important. And one day, after 2 years, we began to see that the product was viral, that our crowdfunding platform was used by senior people in NGOs, and it was able to collect funds. And then we decided to open it to other NGOs and to go all around France, and it began to be to work quite alone, viral. We didn't use any marketing, and in 1 year and a half we grew from 20 NGO to about 3,000 now, and it's still growing.
Yeah, great. And I really like your example, because one of the key elements of diffusion of innovation how it must be simple to people adopt. So I think you had this very clear, and even working with a non-profit world, would have still challenges to get connected. I mean, like small non-profits. So thank you for your example. I want to now jump into our other connector from Malaysia, Shariha. I'm trying to say her name very right. We talked a lot about your experience in Malaysia, and I really like your example because it's from the public government, which is a topic we were talking before. So you have a great experience of, as well as Ismael, starting a project, a unique project, then in your situation with the public government, that later you could replicate to other governments next to your country, which is Malaysia. So could you share with us a little bit about your work, this project, and how could you make this process happen from one unique project to be replicated to other regions? And I think I'm gonna leave the space to watch the PowerPoint.
Yeah. So, hello everybody. I'm Shariha, and I'm from Scope Group, which is the social innovation and impact advisory consultancy I co-founded about 7 years ago in Malaysia. So we do change for a living. We charge people to get them to create change, but we also work with individuals who want to become change makers in any way, whether they're working through an enterprise, a social enterprise, or whether they're in an NGO, government organization, or in the corporate sector. So the way we sort of work with scaling, taking it from initial ideas to really something that creates systems change is always with a lot of patience and a lot of collaboration. So going back to what was discussed in the earlier panel, we truly believe that the only way you can create change is to find the right people to work with initially and to collaborate with them, regardless if they are a competitor or someone you really dislike. You've just got to find a way to work with them. What else can I say? When we first started 7 years ago, it was really just out of a desire to create a bit of change in a system that we saw wasn't working. It had been for 30 years. The drug addiction management in Malaysia did not deliver the results it was supposed to. And of course, drug addiction is very closely linked to HIV/AIDS. So at the same time, the HIV/AIDS epidemic was spiraling out of control in Malaysia. So when we first started, the intention really was to try and create a little bit of a change in a system that wasn't working, never thinking that it would actually scale to what it did eventually. But we had to find the right people to be able to help us do this. And these people sat in government. And going back to what Maria said earlier, if you want to really create change at scale, you've got to work with governments, because the government has more resources than all the philanthropists in the entire world. Just case example, the American government, its spending on delivering social good totally dwarfs what all the philanthropists globally spend. So I think really the formula to taking whatever your idea is for change to scale is to work with those that have the biggest resources. And of course work too with the passionate individuals, with the NGOs, but as a collaboration. One of the things that we do in Malaysia, I mean, the Human Library is just a platform to create that initial conversations between sectors that normally wouldn't speak to each other. So it's a library where the books are humans and the reading is basically the conversation. If we look at some of the other things that we've done, it's really about creating that initial sparks of conversation that can hopefully lead to something. So we tend to bring people who wouldn't normally sit together into the same room. They might not always end up working together, but maybe one or two of them might. And I think that's enough. And together, I think if everyone has that approach, that just create that platform where you can start those early conversations, I think a lot can be achieved.
Great, Shahid. I think Could you just describe a little bit more about the healthcare project on drugs addiction, that the lab, and how, could you bring, for instance, the other governments from other countries to visit? And I think it's an incredible experience, and I think you're gonna like.
I think that's more an example of, when you found something that people are doing that's not normally within their comfort zone. Sometimes they need reassurance that what they're doing is the right thing. And the case that you're mentioning is, when we eventually worked with the Malaysian government to change the way drug users were treated in Malaysia, it took 3 years. And even at that point, when they changed from a system that was a compulsory, detention-based, involuntary, forced, whatever you want to call it, treatment where, people didn't have access to medicines, to a full shift to a healthcare, medical-based approach with voluntary access. They can come and go as they please. Of course, the government didn't feel that, are we really doing the right thing? Because it was still early days. So what we did was we helped create links to other governments who are looking to do things in a different manner, to bring them together with the Malaysian government, to see what Malaysia did. And at the same time, it was also another way that we were reaching out to these other governments to create that spark for change. So since 2010, which was the point at which the Malaysian government changed their system, we've had about 15 different government delegations that have come to Malaysia to learn from them. But actually, it's not just the learning that's happening one way, it's also that reassurance, that reinforcement of, the change that they had created. So that's really the example that you're referring to.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And I think that's something very interesting to think about, how any project that it can be first done in a local level, it's important to be connected somehow to a public policy to look for a scale. So I think you brought very interesting insights on that.
Yeah, but I just wanted to add a comment. We never changed a single policy. Mm-hmm. We looked at it and we thought, it's not efficient to wait for policy to change because people were dying from drug overdoses and HIV/AIDS. It would take a minimum of 5 years to change policy. So we actually worked with existing policies and changed programs instead.
Wow, that's a great insight. Thank you, Shariha. So now I'd like to come to MJ. So MJ is one of the connectors. And he's going to share a little bit about his work, which is working a lot with technology and youth. And so he's going to bring more examples on the entrepreneurship ecosystem and the private sector and how this is really leading for a great change. So,
thank you. Today is Ghana's Day. So it's all about Ghana today. It's not just about Ghana. I'm here celebrating my country today, and I feel glad that at least we are getting to the stage. I'm happy for Nigeria too. So Asians. Yeah. So this is my startup. It's called African New Media. We are focusing on changing the way startups approach media. A lot of time we don't get to hear good stories from Africa in terms of technology, in terms of whatever. We are trying to use our skills, our influences and ideas to change the way people perceive startups, innovation and technology in Africa. So for some time, we've been working with the youth offline, trying to meet them through bar camps. I don't know if any of you have heard of bar camps. So bar camps is more like an conference where young people meet up, and we put up a notice board where they put their interest, and whoever is interested in those topics, they're able to be in the same session and share ideas. We've organized about 28 of these bar camps from 2008 to date. We started in Accra, and today I can boastfully say we have bar camps scattered across Africa. We have Barkham Nairobi, Barkham Dar es Salaam. Like it's just all over the continent now.
And how do you make it to replicate and make so many bar camps all over?
So I've been traveling a lot. I'm happy to say I've been close to almost all over Africa. I've worked within the various hubs in Africa. So this is my co-partner, and that's me and my dog. So that is my startup dog. I don't travel with her all the time, but when we are together in Ghana, we are always together. So I've worked among the various hubs in Africa, and I did that as a blogger. I go there, work with them, sort of strategize, and position them in a way they can actually produce the result they're looking for. In terms of scalability, approach to VC, and all of that. Because a lot of the youth out there have the idea to develop a product, but looking for funding and the next step to scale and become a team or whatever, they find it very difficult to do. So we go in there to do that. So I've done all of that for the past couple of years, and I felt it's time for me to start up my own business and run it as a consultant among my African peers. So that's what I've done in the past. The whole Barkham movement started in 2008 when a couple of my friends who were schooling in San Francisco came back to Ghana and like, you know what, this is a good idea, let's replicate it in Ghana. And before we knew it, the rest of my friends who follow me on Twitter jumped on. So today we have Barkham Nairobi, Barkham Kampala, Barkham Dar es Salaam. It's all over the place. There's Barkham Cairo, and it's spreading. And even within Ghana today, we didn't just limit it to Barkham Ghana. We went all board to even having junior Barkhams all over Ghana. So today we have Barkham Accra, Barkham Kumasi, Barkham Tamale. It's just all over, yeah.
Wow.
So my focus on today's topic is basically looking at how we can develop the African ecosystem very well. Because the key thing that I see as a problem is lack of funding for developers and entrepreneurs. A lot of young people have the ideas, but the funding is not there. And donor agencies don't look at young people. They want to work with young people working from a hub. So once they realize you're working from this hub, they can probably fund you. So that is where we have to look into, championing the cause of hubs all over the continent. Limited internet reach and broadband penetration is also a major issue. Without internet, we cannot create, we cannot innovate. So all this talk about innovation, it won't go anywhere if there's no internet. So countries where there's lack of internet, we need to push internet to those areas. And I'm happy Facebook, Google are trying to do something big for Africa. I'm just looking forward to that. We're also looking at women in ICT. There's lack of women in ICT, today in Africa. So it's about time you start talking to your various, sisters, nieces to go into ICT, to go into STEM, so that the next Bill Gates, the next Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg could be a woman with a bright idea. We're looking at lack of mentorship and lack of thriving venture capitalist community. What I've seen is a lot of our own people don't believe in ideas that come from Africa. We have something called Glocal. Most startups in Africa today either have a co-founder who is white or who is Caucasian and probably been to an Ivy League school, and that bridges the gap between funding for an African startup. So if you, a local startup, you are out there thinking you can get funding from some big corporation in the States or probably in Europe, it might not happen because they don't know who you are, they don't know your work. So it is about time our own people who have the means and the money to support our own ideas so that we can develop the solutions for the local problem we are facing each day. Next slide, please.
And
so here is just a list of the startups that has come out of Ghana. This is Motec. Motec is focusing on bridging the gap between pregnant women living in the villages and connecting them to hospitals and giving them anti-natal training and notification through voice SMS in the local languages. We have Arts Group. They're trying to bridge the gap between content creators and publishers and advertising. There's ClaimSync. In today's world, it's very difficult for you to claim your health benefits when you use your insurance or whatever. these guys are making it very simple for you to claim your health insurance and more. So all these startups are actually coming from Ghana. And this is just a list of them. And I believe once we start investing into all these and the more coming up, I'm sure we'll probably push to the next level.
MJ, that's really, really great to hear all the innovations coming from Africa. And yeah, so there's so much creativity and potential. Thank you for sharing with us. And all the problems that still need to be solved. Now I'm going to go to Hazami, that she was the organizing of Amina+SocialGood, which was a very interesting and unique event, which happened in a very scalable way and totally unconventional. And when she explained to me, I was like terrified about how amazing it was. So please share with us, how could you create this environment? Yeah, no, terrified in a good way. Yeah. Yeah, maybe my...
I hope I'm not scary.
No, yeah.
Thank you. My name's Hazami Barmada, and I work in the space of kind of social good, but really strategy and helping develop strategies for developing collaborative partnerships that bring about social good, but also advance business, advance society, and advance interests of governments. So a lot of the work that I've done traditionally has been for corporations. I've done government consulting work and various things around strategic communications. But being from the Middle East, North Africa, one of my biggest frustrations and struggles being leveraged and positioned here in Washington is that there's a very huge misnarrative about what's happening in the region in the space of innovation and entrepreneurship that has been in the region for quite some time. But you often hear about, oh, entrepreneurship is just now starting. Entrepreneurship is just now starting with the name entrepreneurship, which is an international term. So some of the big issues that I deal with in a lot of the travel that I do to meet with youth groups around the region, I do a lot of kind of motivational-ish meets kind of how to inspire yourself to create work in your community talks throughout the region. And the biggest challenges that a lot of youth face is the fact that they are told what to be doing based on the international narrative, the fact that they're innovating and they've created all these great programs, but no one cares. You always hear in the media, where's the moderate Arab voice? Guess what? No one's covering it. And last but not least, I mean, we can talk about inspiring people all day long, but when you're stuck with policy confines and fiscal regulations and things like that, no matter how great your innovation is, if you can't get money into the country or can't get money out of the country or don't have the infrastructure to understand how to set up your institution, in a lot of the region, for example, the whole idea of a social enterprise does not exist. The fact that you're either a for-profit or you're a not-for-profit, and oftentimes, and depending on the country, not-for-profit is a charity. By charity, I mean I'm going to give you a sandwich, not I'm working on social innovation. So there's a lot of these structural issues that I deal with a lot in speaking to youth. So what came about from Mina+SocialGood was wanting to kind of have a global conversation. And when the +SocialGood team had approached me to create a social good initiative in the region, one of my biggest frustrations is we keep talking about digital diplomacy, we keep talking about technology, but we're not using it. And when you look at the Arab world and you're looking at all the revolutions and the Arab Spring and various other things, I mean, we keep talking about the role that Twitter and Facebook play in giving voices, which I don't know if you guys know, but one of the countries that has the biggest Twitter penetration in the world is actually Saudi Arabia. And Arabic content online is one of the least amount of translated material. There's some of the least amount of language in Arabic, but it's one of the biggest consumer markets on the internet. So there's a lot of misalignment, yet we keep speaking about digital engagement for the region. The conversations tend to be in the confines of the UN, and we live stream out. So again, people in the region are consumers. They can tweet back, but they're fringe to the main event. So what we wanted to do with Mina+SocialGood is we wanted to create a truly digital conversation, in that we did not fly any speakers to our hub. Our hub was merely a satellite entity where we actually engaged speakers via a partnership with Cisco from where they were located around the world. So that's kind of the back end of the room, where you have different screens from different countries, everywhere from Dubai to Egypt to Lebanon to Amman, Jordan, Silicon Valley. Actually, people participated. The youth envoy of the UN, Ahmed Al-Hindawi, participated from New York. Director of Partnerships for the UN, also Annette Richardson, participated from New York. And then Washington and beyond. We had numerous countries, 17 to be exact. And if you can go to the next slide there. We did have an in-person event in Washington, and we actually had in-person events around the world. So we had meetups in 29 countries, and they were in-person live stream events, but they also had local conversations and local content, and they fed into the larger conversation. So the entire thing was actually a digital summit. And that was one of our speakers who participated actually from Silicon Valley, who is the CEO of TechWadi, which is an organization that aims to bridge the tech community between Silicon Valley and the Middle East, which is booming, actually. So there's the Twitter reach of our event. We ended up having a Twitter traction of 27 million people in 53 countries around the world. And to a lot of people, I mean, they're like, yeah, okay. I mean, since when did you ever have a positive conversation about the Arab world that reached that many people that did not turn political or religious? And that was really what we aimed to do. It was really about how do you inspire people, how do you change social consciousness, how do you inspire people in the region to be owners of their own issues and realize that we can also be agents of change in our own communities, and we do not need, you know, to rely on international resources, yet we do need to impact local policy and figure out strategic ways to do so. But then also a big part of the conversation was not just empowering the region. For me, it was empowering the West and the US and corporates to realize they also have to change their strategy. When you have events in Washington that talk about women in technology in the Arab world, and it's all Anglo-Saxon, middle-aged white men, which happens all the time, there's a big issue, a very, very big issue. And that's something that we're really pushing people to realize, that if you want to empower the region, you have to empower the region. And so our Twitter reach was great. And here's the critical mass of online registration. What we looked at was countries that had numerous people engaging online, and that was the Twitter map. So it was kind of spread out around the world, a lot of engagement from Europe. A big part of what we do through Al-Mubadara is diaspora engagement. And so really working with diasporas to say, what is your role in funding opportunities online, in knowledge transfer via digital tools, whether it's Skype, mentorships, whatever it may be, and really empowering diasporas to realize that you can play a role in developing the region without physically having to be back in the region. And you know, really creating that. So again, here's the Twitter reach. It's exciting. We trended, the snapshot I took was on stage, but that was later. But we were trending on Twitter, which was exciting. IPO and Twitter beat us. It was the day that they traded and went public. And here are some of the conversations that came out of it. So positive, forward, speaking, excited, change, Arabic, discuss, engage. So, I mean, a lot of different positive conversation traces. You can go on to the next slide, please. So our partners, how did we make this happen? We made it happen through collaborations. A lot of the, I've checked out from approaching foundations and grant writing a long time ago because I find them to be way too complicated and way too self-serving for the grant giver, not as much the grant receiver. You have to cater your program oftentimes, which is very sad. Maybe I just don't understand the game quite yet, but, and it is a game. So we go for corporates that are interested in the region, both from the angle of social corporate responsibility, but also people who have an interested market demographic in the people in the networks that we're reaching out to. So Silatech, the Palestinian telecommunications company, Paltel, Turkish Airlines, Booz Allen Hamilton, various others. Again, this was our inaugural year, and we pulled this together in literally like less than 2 months. And so here are some of our global event partners. And what we did is we worked with global partners to not only pump out narratives, but then to also engage their communities in conversations about how do you advance the Arab world, and how do we create a constructive conversation that really diversifies the pool of stakeholders. Because realizing in order to have sustainable change, you do need to engage youth. You do need to engage corporates. You need to engage young donors and expand the pool of who is a donor who funds these types of things. You need to work with policy and within policy spheres. And that is something that oftentimes in developing countries, youth are seen as just disruptive. They're not seen as constructively disruptive, and that's something that we need to work also on empowering youth to not only push the boundaries, which is very much needed, but how do you constructively then engage to where youth programming is not just a side thing that people just want to appease to and say, yep, we checked that youth box, but actually have a voice at the table, not just be in the room. And that's a conversation and why we worked with a lot of diverse event partners, including the American University of Dubai and Ashoka and various of the other USAID, UN Foundation, and various others to actually bring the right voices to the table. So what came out of it was this idea that a lot of Arab youth and a lot of youth in developing and emerging markets use Twitter and social media to talk about their frustrations, but we don't necessarily use it the next level, which is how do you tip this conversation into action and inspire youth to actually be catalysts of change in their communities, inspire companies to support that, whether it's through kind of matching programs or fellowship programs. How do you expand the pool of donors that support youth programming, where I don't have the statistics off the top of my mind, but youth, it's very hard for youth to actually access funding in a lot of markets, and even in this country. If you don't have a track record, you don't have access, you don't have networks, it's super hard to get your idea off the ground. I personally have struggled with this, and I'm based in Washington, so I can only imagine people actually living on the ground. So one of the conversations we started was the My Arab World Twitter hashtag, and we just got the Arab Idol winner, who is this awesome guy, Mohammed Assaf, who's Palestinian, to come on board as one of our ambassadors. And what it's ultimately encouraging Arab youth to do is to say, look, we understand you're frustrated, but tell us what you're doing to be that change agent. How are you taking ownership of this issue and actually doing something with it? So it's a pledge campaign. The website is myarabworld.com, and we're in the process of doing a soft beta launch, but it's actually, it starts with I will, ... and then the end is because it's my Arab world. And that's the campaign that we're getting people to now start engaging with. So this all came out of the MENA Social Good, and we hope to expand the conversation and to create actual programming and use the digital space to actually take all of these summits and conferences that are happening in the masses, and they're all replicating each other's work, and they're all talking about the same exact issues. How do you take all of that and push it to the next level of actually creating programs, but also giving access for youth to be in the conversations, because most cannot travel, cannot afford to travel, and are oftentimes, again, just recipients of content.
Wow, Hazami, that was an amazing example of the power of technology to give access to everyone to participate and engage. And I really believe, like after doing Social Good Brazil summits, the power of engaging a summit into an action-oriented approach. So it's not only about talking during the event, but how could you use the event as a platform for a bigger next step. So I think that was an amazing example of social good and the power of technology to do that, and very new mindset of doing a summit. So that was great. I think we have questions. Yeah.
Yes. We actually have a question from Esther Akbarakwa, one of our advisors that couldn't be here today. She's tweeted from Nigeria, and her question is, how do we redefine human value with technology?
Nice, very nice. Would someone like to?
And I think just, if I could actually take a stab at that, just from the Middle East, what we've seen recently, since just from Algeria too, is that digital tools give everybody a voice. No one's voice is more important, and everyone's voice can get out there. The problem on the flip side is that now everyone thinks they're a political analyst, and everyone also feels like their voice is the right voice, and you have a lot of online conflict, and oftentimes a lot of what starts to be constructive conversations turn into very petty, horrific, like Twitter battles, which I see all the time, which I knock out from. I just don't participate. But I think defining human value, and what we're seeing is that if you have an idea that is something constructive, with Twitter, with social media. I actually don't use Twitter. I use Facebook a lot more. But you're able to connect with people. I mean, like the 6 degrees of separation becomes like 1.5 degrees of separation. One tweet or one message saying, hey, I want to connect with social innovators in X country, allows you to do so with social media. But I think the human value component is you realize that every single person has agency. And every single person has the ability to impact change or to connect with people that are like-minded. It's just a matter of how you use that agency and how you be that catalyst of change. And I think with digital tools, everybody is starting to find a voice, where before we used to just rely on what the people in the media said. Now we are the media with social tools.
Well, just to add to that, we have a couple of cases where we use social media and technology to actually bridge the gap between the diaspora. I mean, that is Ghanaians living outside Ghana and Ghana during the election. We were able to rally around using social media during the election to monitor the election. We basically ran Ghana Decides from our phones, and we had a hub center where we're able to be the link between Ghanaians who were seeking information about the election in 2012 and the traditional media in Ghana were not able to provide those results because we had volunteers on the field who were proactive in getting us engaged more and more. So in a way, we were able to bridge that gap of information and connect people who wanted information more about Ghana and more.
Yeah, and I want to add into this question as well because that's a big conversation we have all over Brazil in terms that like everyone is so connected and youth are so connected. So as you were saying, technology is giving great power to all of us.
Yeah.
A power of to say whatever we believe, you know, in different ways. So that's a big kind of conversation we must have. It's about human values in using technology, how to best use technology to redefine. Because otherwise, I think something we should be aware and not be naive is the bad effects of technology as well. And the next generation who is coming, so what is our role in terms of values, right? Values sharing and what we want for the future. So to also bring that kind of conversation to the table when we talk about technology to this so connected generation.
Great. I have one more question, also from our community, from Kate Beresford. She's also one connector that couldn't be here today. She's from South Africa, from Cape Town, and she's asking what models of business and collaboration should innovators and change makers look towards?
Wow. What models of business innovators should look towards?
Yes, models of business and collaboration.
And collaborations. Do you want to
take a stab?
Maybe what we saw in France is that I think that the new business model will rely on cooperation and confidence. I mean that we've seen that in crowdfunding, in collaborative economy, each one is taking a percentage. And to my mind, this is not the new way of doing business. For instance, on our platform, 100% on what is collected goes to the NGO, and we rely on a tip lived by our community. And I think that it's a good way to be reassured that there will not be a monopolistic deviance, as we can see that on Facebook and Google, and that the new business model will rely on confidence. Also, I wanted to add something to the last question, is what is the power of the digital? I think that it's the power of synchronization and of organization, not just to talk. I mean, during the Arab revolutions, the power of the digital was quite simple. If you are 100 to go in the street, you are taken by the police, and it's ended. If you are 100,000, well, you're too numerous, and it's okay. So this power of synchronization is really very, very important to me.
I wanted to add that I think one of the most important things that needs to be established really early on before collaboration can happen is trust. Mm-hmm. And you know, trust, it's not an easy thing to gain, yeah? And often when you come from different sectors, there's an existing mistrust that exists, for example, between government and the NGO sector, just one example, or maybe business and government. So in our experience, sometimes you need somebody else to be involved, to be able to bring these parties together. And that's really the role of the intermediary, the catalyst, the facilitator, the bridge. Mm-hmm. I think that's really crucial to have this other party sometimes that can create that safe space where collaborations can occur, where, you know, people from different sectors, they may not start off with trust, but at least they feel safe in the space, and perhaps the trust could then be built.
One key.
I want to add when you're done.
Yeah, you too.
One key factor we should look into is also your online influence. If you have a huge online influence, you can translate that into some sort of partnership with a local NGO. I mean, I want to focus on our NGO. I mean, let's forget about government for now. the local NGO need our support more. So once you've been able to build some sort of influence online, you can translate that into business and help local NGOs develop whatever idea they really want to care. Yeah.
I think I would encourage more people, and I'm working on this myself, to look at social ventures. The idea that a lot of NGOs struggle and become super competitive with one another. I mean, let's be real. We talk about NGOs like they're all out to do well. It is a dog-eat-dog world. For anyone who's tried to fundraise or to really strategically collaborate, it is hard. Your ideas get taken, your ideas, you shop out ideas for collaboration, and 2 weeks later they launch an identical program. I mean, it happens. For us, we have to be honest about the struggles around collaboration, and I think it's a conversation that we have to also push for accountability within the NGO space, also within that. But I think when you're looking at social entrepreneurship and social impact, sustainability is one of the key conversations. It's about how can you create impact on a local level that will live beyond the first 2 years, where you're super inspired and you're willing to put half your paycheck aside, which anyone who runs an NGO starts off oftentimes that way. And oftentimes, very sadly, a lot of NGOs do die out after initial years because they cannot sustain funding. So looking at doing well by doing good, I think, is a model that a lot of people are now moving towards. It's this idea that it is not shameful to make business and to make money while serving the community. NGO workers have bills and rent to pay also. And I think it's really being able to have these really hard conversations that a lot of us do shy away from. And we've been talking about that for the past few days here, and I really applaud the UN Foundation and the Plus Social Good community for taking these issues on and giving us space to actually have these conversations, because we do need to think about sustainability. We do need to think about entrepreneurship, not just as about the cool digital tools that are created, but how can entrepreneurship actually transform communities and give us the tools we need to be change agents in our networks.
And why I think this question is so interesting is because I see business model as something applicable like for any sector. Like even if you're a nonprofit, you have to think about your sustainability as something key, as like a blood in your vein that is gonna make you last for future. So I completely agree with what you said. But what I like to think is about business model is something broader than business or private sector, but something that you can think about. How do you generate value for society? How do you deliver and how you capture this value back in non-financial, sustainable way? So I am a big fan of social business and social ventures, but I will also see very interesting and innovative nonprofits being sustainable, and as well movements that even don't have like a specific organizational title, but they're very horizontal, and they're doing an amazing job of being sustainable in a very different mindset. So
I wanted to pick up on that as well, because we run an accelerator for NGOs. It's called the NGO Accelerator. We work with a bank. And the idea behind that accelerator is to help NGOs become financially sustainable, to find business models within the areas that they work that can then become a revenue stream. Mm-hmm. But I totally agree that sometimes you need to be able to create change from where you are, and you don't necessarily have to create a new venture to be able to do that. And the incubator that we run works on that principle, that you could stay in your government job, you could stay in your corporate job and create change as well. But of course, we work with everybody, whether they're still in an organization or whether they want to start their own venture.
But I like, sorry.
I just wanted to add a point, I like what you raised, Hazami, about how the kind of stigma out there is that if you're a non-profit, you're not allowed to make money. If you're a social venture, how can you make money off of someone else's misery? But actually, if you look at it, you don't complain because a doctor is paid a salary, or a teacher is paid a salary, or a fireman, because those are accepted society norms that you could work in a job that delivers social value, and it's okay to get a salary. But the moment you become an entrepreneur, or an NGO, you're not allowed to do that. So I think we really need to change that discourse.
And I like a lot this conversation because we're talking about shifting paradigms and about new models of make social impact. And I think we are doing this transition right. We're thinking about a new world that we want, but still we are not there, and we're trying new methods. So sometimes it looks very weird. But yeah, I really like in the lab program in Brazil, we also work with different kinds of, how do you say, social innovations. So it vary as much as your example in Malaysia, and they're real examples, and they're very sustainable. So I like that a lot. Are we finishing? Are we opening for questions?
We've got to go ahead. We have the two from, we have the two questions from online. What I'd love to do, we are out of time here on stage, but what I'd love to do is invite those of you who are still with us in the room. We get started again in our working group in about 15 minutes. And so I'd love to invite you, if you have any questions for the panel, to grab them and ask them with us here in the room. So I'd love to say thank you to this great group of people, and to thank all of you for joining us. To give some closing remarks.
Okay, no problem.
I promise I'll be very brief. Thank you very much. From saunas to startup pets, I heard a few new ideas.